welcome to our deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at Blue Truth by David Deida.
Oh, yeah.
It's a pretty dense book.
It is.
Lots of really interesting ideas.
Yeah, and Deida
About how to live a more open and fulfilling life.
doesn't hold back.
Right.
He really just dives right into some of the big questions.
Yeah, so he really gets into like death and dissatisfaction and the interplay of like masculine and feminine energies.
And how all that ties into like living a life of love.
Right. So for people who haven't read Blue Truth, maybe give us a little bit of a sense of the tone of the book.
Yeah.
It's not really like a self-help book in the traditional sense.
Not at all. I would say it's more like a philosophical exploration,
Right.
kind of a spiritual guide even.
Yeah.
He's really challenging us to think differently.
To think differently about life and about ourselves.
Exactly. And it starts right from the beginning with this like really stark statement about death.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the one thing that we all know is inevitable.
Yeah. The one thing we all have in common.
Right. It's almost like a wake-up call.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you're going to die someday, so like, how are you going to make the most of the time that you have?
And that leads him to this idea of living fully in each moment.
Yeah, offering your heartbeat to the world.
Yeah.
So I think like a good place to start with listeners is if you take that idea seriously, that like you're going to die someday, how might that awareness of your own mortality change your priorities today? What would you do differently if you really like embrace the preciousness of each moment?
It's a big question.
It is a big question.
And it kind of ties into another key concept that Deida explores, which is dissatisfaction.
Okay.
You know, that feeling that something's missing.
Yeah, we've all felt that.
But instead of seeing it as something negative, he actually suggests that that feeling of chronic dissatisfaction might actually be a sign that we're resisting openness,
Interesting.
that we're clinging to some false sense of separateness.
So it's like that feeling of something's missing is actually a clue that we need to kind of let go of our attachments and open up more to like the present moment.
That's exactly it.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
He even encourages us to feel that dissatisfaction fully,
Okay.
to not try to run away from it or numb it out,
So to lean into it.
but to see it as a guide
Right.
toward greater openness.
So it's almost like the more you resist, the more you're kind of trapped in that cycle of dissatisfaction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's paradoxical, but welcoming discomfort can actually be a path to deeper bliss. He even shares this anecdote in the book about experiencing this profound openness in the midst of really intense physical pain.
So even in those moments of like challenge or discomfort, there's still a way to access that deeper level of peace and fulfillment.
Right.
That's really powerful.
And it kind of leads to this next idea of breathing everything in,
Yeah.
allowing ourselves to feel the full spectrum of our emotions,
The good, the bad, the ugly.
both positive and negative, without shutting down or resisting.
So it's like instead of trying to like avoid discomfort or numb ourselves to pain, we can actually use those experiences as opportunities for growth and deeper connection.
Precisely.
That's a really different way of looking at things.
And it kind of connects to this idea that he talks about, that we literally take on the shape of what we focus on.
Oh, yeah.
So if we're constantly dwelling on negativity or fear, we're actually shaping ourselves into somebody who embodies those qualities.
Right.
But if we focus on love and connection, then we radiate that energy outward.
Absolutely. So it's like we have this power to shape ourselves through our thoughts or beliefs or our attention.
Right. And this brings us to Deida's really interesting exploration of jealousy.
Okay.
He doesn't see it as a character flaw,
Okay.
but rather as a signpost pointing us toward a deeper truth.
So it's not something to be ashamed of, but it's actually something to be curious about.
Exactly.
Like, what is this jealousy trying to tell me?
And he suggests that jealousy often arises when we place false hope on external things for happiness.
Okay, so things like possessions or status or even other people.
Right. So it's not really about the object of our jealousy, but about our own refusal to open up to the present moment and find fulfillment within.
Okay.
He gives this example of someone being jealous of a wealthy friend.
Right.
But it's not really about the money.
It's about what that represents.
It's about that person's own refusal to open up to the richness of their own life.
And so he would say that the key is not to try to acquire more things or to compare ourselves to others.
But to really cultivate that sense of inner fulfillment.
To find that richness within ourselves.
Exactly.
And that's where his exploration of masculine and feminine energies comes in. Now, before anyone jumps to conclusions, he's not talking about traditional gender roles or stereotypes.
They're all.
This is not about men versus women.
It's deeper than that.
It's about recognizing these deeper energetic polarities that exist within each of us.
And how those polarities interact both within ourselves and in our relationships with others.
Right. So can you give us a little bit more of a sense of what he means by masculine and feminine energies?
He describes the masculine as seeking freedom while the feminine yearns for love.
Okay.
So these are like fundamental forces that drive our desires, our relationships, and our experiences in the world.
So can you give us some specific examples of how these energies might manifest in everyday life?
Absolutely. So someone embodying masculine energy at work might be very focused on achieving goals, taking initiative, asserting their leadership.
Okay.
Drawn to roles that involve problem solving, strategic thinking, taking risks.
Yeah.
And then someone cultivating feminine energy in relationships might be more receptive to their partner's needs, expressing their emotions openly, creating a nurturing and supportive environment.
Right.
Embracing qualities like empathy, compassion, and intuition.
So it's not about like one being better than the other.
No, not at all.
It's really about finding that balance,
Exactly.
both within ourselves and in our interactions with others.
It's like a dance.
A dance between these two forces.
Yeah, right. And Deida believes that understanding this dance is key to unlocking deeper levels of passion, intimacy, and fulfillment in our lives.
That makes sense.
Huh.
So before we move on to kind of the more practical aspects of how to cultivate these energies, I'm curious about something he says about truth.
Okay.
He makes this point that knowing the truth is easier than feeling it, and feeling it is easier than living it.
It's so true.
It's like we can have all the knowledge in the world, but if we don't actually embody it in our actions,
Right.
it's not really transforming us.
He uses this example of like knowing that eating too much sugar is unhealthy,
We all know that.
but still doing it.
Yeah.
It's like we know what's good for us, but sometimes our actions don't align with our knowledge.
And I think that's a really important point to highlight, because it's easy to read a book like Blue Truth and to feel like, oh yeah, I get this. This makes sense. But the real challenge is in actually putting these ideas into practice.
Absolutely. It's about bridging that gap between knowledge and embodiment.
To not just understand these concepts intellectually, but to actually feel them in our hearts and express them in our lives.
And that's where things start to get really interesting, because Deida believes that sex can be a powerful pathway to that kind of embodiment.
Yeah.
He sees it as having the potential to be so much more than just a physical act.
And this is definitely where Blue Truth kind of pushes the boundaries a little bit.
It does.
He talks about transforming sex from a routine, pleasure-seeking experience into a profound expression of love and truth.
He encourages us to go beyond just the pursuit of orgasm
Yeah.
and to embody love in every motion and breath during sex.
And I think for a lot of people, that can be a really challenging concept, because we're so conditioned to think about sex in a certain way.
Right.
And he's really asking us to kind of reframe our entire understanding of intimacy and sexuality.
It's about bringing a level of consciousness and intention to our sexual experiences.
Right. And it's not about denying pleasure or trying to be something we're not.
It's about deepening our capacity for connection and intimacy.
And to experience a level of ecstasy that goes beyond just the physical.
Exactly.
So I think this is a good place to pause for now.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground already.
We've talked about death and dissatisfaction and masculine and feminine energies, and even touched on sex.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Right. There's so much more to explore in Blue Truth.
So in the next part of our deep dive,
We're going to delve into Deida's powerful metaphor of the Blue Truth.
a concept that invites us to see beyond surface appearances and to connect with a deeper essence that lies beyond our preferences and judgments.
It's a metaphor that can really change how we view the world and our place in it.
So welcome back. Let's jump into the story from the epilogue of Blue Truth
Okay.
that I think really illustrates this idea of the Blue Truth.
Yeah.
It features Mykonos, who's kind of like the spiritual mentor figure hanging out with a group of friends,
Okay.
including a guy named Paco.
Classic Paco.
And they're at this beachside cafe.
Right.
There's a band playing, and this really beautiful waitress catches Mykonos' eye,
Oh, yeah.
and he actually refers to her as a whore.
Nice.
Before anyone gets the wrong idea.
Yeah, I was about to say.
This isn't meant to be offensive
Right.
in this context.
In Mykonos' world.
For Mykonos, it's actually a term of endearment.
Okay.
It signifies a woman who embodies this kind of like open-hearted energy, this deep, uninhibited connection to life.
Okay.
So he's completely captivated by her presence, but Paco...
Oh, Paco.
He's in a completely different headspace.
Yeah, of course he is.
He's grumpy, he's resistant, he finds the music absolutely dreadful.
So it's like you have these two completely different perspectives on the same situation.
Exactly. And it's this contrast that sets the stage for this whole Blue Truth metaphor.
Okay.
So Mykonos encourages Paco to feel the love, the aliveness that's present, even if he personally dislikes the band.
Right.
It's like he's saying love transcends our personal preferences and judgments.
That the love is still there, whether you like it or not. Okay, so how does he bring in the Blue Truth then?
He uses this really cool analogy of a flame.
Okay.
The reds and yellows are the surface.
Easy to see.
But deep in the center,
Yeah.
there's a blue that's often overlooked.
Okay.
Just like if you go deeper in the ocean,
Right.
the bluer it gets.
Yeah.
And blue represents depth.
Mm.
And he's basically saying, beyond everything we can see or know,
Yeah.
there's a place where everything is blue.
So that blue represents that deeper essence.
Exactly.
Something that lies beyond our immediate perceptions and judgments.
It's like tapping into that deeper wellspring of being,
Right.
that source of wisdom and fulfillment that's always there.
Even if we're not always aware of it.
And he actually calls this the truth that sets our hearts free.
Mm.
The truth that allows us to feel deeper than things seem.
That's powerful.
And throughout the book, he's giving us all these different practices to access that blue truth.
Okay.
Like feeling into our hearts.
Right.
Opening to the full spectrum of our emotions. Surrendering to the present moment.
So it's not just an intellectual concept.
No, it's about embodiment.
It's about actually experiencing it.
And he also talks a lot about the role of the body in this whole process.
Okay.
Especially when it comes to sexual intimacy. He suggests that our physical form, our sexual essence, shapes our deepest desires and how we experience the world.
So this is where his teachings on masculine and feminine energies come back into play.
Oh.
And just to reiterate,
Right.
he's not talking about traditional gender roles or stereotypes.
It's deeper than that.
These are fundamental forces within each of us.
And he believes that understanding these polarities can unlock this deeper level of passion, intimacy, and fulfillment.
So just to recap,
Yeah.
he talks about the masculine essence being driven by this desire for freedom,
Right.
while the feminine yearns for love.
To be filled, to be received, to be swept away.
And again,
Right.
it's not limited to men and women,
It's about the energetic essence that we embody.
regardless of gender identity.
And these essences shape our deepest longings.
Okay.
The masculine seeks to penetrate, to direct,
To make his mark on the world,
while the feminine yearns to open, to receive.
to be penetrated.
It's like a cosmic dance.
So he takes this pretty far.
He does.
When he talks about the role of surrender in sexual intimacy,
You could say that.
he actually suggests that for a woman to experience true bliss, she needs to trust her lover's masculine direction more than her own.
Now, that might be a controversial statement for some.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But it goes back to this whole concept of polarity.
Okay.
The masculine thrives on providing direction and penetration.
And the feminine is receptive to that.
It's a surrender to the interplay of these forces.
And he believes that when this dance is done consciously,
Right.
it can lead to a level of intimacy and ecstasy.
That goes beyond just the physical.
It's almost like a spiritual experience.
He talks about how sex can become a revelation of truth,
Wow.
a merging of consciousness and light that opens us to a deeper reality.
So for Deida, sex is not just about physical pleasure.
It's a pathway to deeper connection to spiritual awakening.
It's about transcending the ego.
And he emphasizes that this kind of deep intimacy requires vulnerability, trust,
Right.
a willingness to let go of our boundaries.
Which can be really challenging
It can be terrifying for a lot of people
because we've built up so many walls and defenses.
to protect ourselves from getting hurt.
So he's asking us to really unlearn everything we've been taught about relationships and intimacy,
In a way.
to move beyond all the games and strategy,
Right.
and just be completely open and present.
With another human being.
And that's scary.
But ultimately, his message is one of liberation.
Okay.
He wants us to break free from the limitations of fear, insecurity, self-doubt,
So that we can experience the fullness of love.
and the radiance of our true nature.
I love that.
So it's a beautiful vision,
It is.
but how do we actually put this into practice?
Yeah, that's the question.
How do we cultivate this level of openness and surrender in our own lives?
Not just in the bedroom.
Not just in the bedroom, but in all of our relationships.
In our work, in our creative pursuits.
Everywhere.
So where do we even begin?
Well, he offers a variety of practices.
Okay.
But one of the most fundamental is simply paying attention.
Okay.
He talks about feeling into the depth of each moment,
Right.
noticing the subtle sensations, the emotions, the energies that are present.
So it's about shifting from a mode of doing
To a mode of being.
instead of constantly striving and achieving,
We pause.
and just be present.
With what is.
And that can be really challenging in our culture,
It can.
where we're so focused on productivity and achievement.
But Deida would say that this practice of presence
Yeah.
can transform even the most mundane activities.
So give me an example.
Like washing the dishes.
Okay.
But instead of rushing through it mindlessly,
Right.
you really feel the warmth of the water,
Yeah.
the texture of the soap,
Right.
the movement of your hands.
It sounds almost meditative.
It is. He believes that every moment can be an opportunity for spiritual practice, for opening to that blue truth that permeates all of existence.
So it's not about escaping from the world.
Still.
It's about bringing a deeper awareness.
To everything we do.
Even something as simple as washing dishes.
Can become a gateway to a deeper experience of reality.
That's really beautiful.
And another key practice is cultivating openness in our interactions with others.
Okay.
Feeling into the hearts of those around us, seeing beyond their surface personalities
Right.
to the deeper essence that they embody.
So it's like we're looking through that blue flame,
Exactly.
past the superficial layers to that core of shared humanity.
That connects us all.
And I think that can be really challenging sometimes,
It can.
especially when we're dealing with people who we perceive as being different from us or who challenge our beliefs.
But it's in those moments that this practice becomes even more important.
Right.
Because it allows us to move beyond judgment and criticism.
And to meet people with more understanding and compassion.
To see that divine spark in everyone.
Even those who we might not agree with or who might trigger us.
Exactly.
And then there's the practice of expressing our love more freely,
Yes.
of giving our deepest gifts without holding back.
It's about living as an expression of love.
Right.
Allowing our actions to flow from that deep wellspring within.
So instead of waiting for the perfect moment,
Or worrying about how our actions will be received.
we just offer ourselves fully.
In each interaction,
And this applies to all aspects of our lives,
Right.
not just our romantic relationships.
it could be as simple as smiling at a stranger,
Yeah,
listening attentively to a friend,
right.
putting extra care into a work project,
It's about bringing that same level of intentionality and presence.
to everything we do.
Now, Deida acknowledges that living this way isn't always easy.
Right.
We're constantly bombarded with distractions and stressors.
And negativity.
It's easy to get caught up in the drama of daily life.
And lose sight of that blue truth.
But he encourages us to see these challenges as opportunities for practice,
Right.
for strengthening our capacity for presence, openness, and love.
It's like building a spiritual muscle.
Yeah,
The more we exercise it.
the stronger it becomes.
And this is where the concept of surrender comes in.
Okay.
You know, we can't force our way to enlightenment.
Fulfillment.
It's about letting go of our need to control,
Right.
trusting the wisdom of the universe.
Allowing ourselves to be guided by something bigger than ourselves.
He uses this analogy of a surfer riding a wave.
I love that analogy.
The surfer doesn't create the wave. They
Right.
simply learn to ride it.
To flow with the energy that's already there.
It's about aligning ourselves with the natural rhythms of life.
Allowing ourselves to be moved by a deeper current.
And when we surrender in this way, we open ourselves up to a world of possibilities.
To a deeper experience of love and freedom and joy.
It's a beautiful vision.
It is.
And Blue Truth is a challenging book.
It is.
There's no doubt about that.
It asks us to step outside our comfort zones.
You question our assumptions.
To embrace a more expansive view of reality.
It's not a book for the passive reader.
Right.
It's a call to action.
A challenge to live more consciously, more lovingly, more authentically.
So as we move into the final part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with this question to ponder.
Okay.
If we were to truly embody the blue truth in our everyday lives,
Right.
what would that look like for you?
How would your interactions, your work, your relationships be transformed?
It's a question worth exploring.
It is.
And it's a journey that we can all embark on.
One breath,
Yeah.
one interaction, one moment at a time.
Okay, so we're back. And we've talked about so much stuff.
We have.
Embracing death, feeling fully masculine and feminine energies, all this stuff in Blue Truth. It's a lot. But the big question is, how do we bring it into everyday life?
Yeah, how do we actually live this blue truth? It's easy to talk about, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
So, like, Practically speaking, what can we do? Where do we start? Well, one thing Deida talks about a lot is just paying attention, like really feeling each moment.
Okay, so not just going through the motions.
No, like really noticing the sensations, the emotions, the energy.
It's like if I'm washing dishes.
Even something like that, instead of just zoning out, you're really present with the water, the soap, how your hands move.
It becomes almost meditative.
Exactly. Every moment is an opportunity to connect with that deeper reality.
So it's not about escaping from the world. It's about being more present within it.
Yeah, bringing that awareness into everything you do.
I like that.
Yeah.
And what about our relationships? How does Blue Truth change how we interact with others?
Well, he talks about feeling into people's hearts, seeing beyond the surface.
Like looking through that blue flame we talked about.
Exactly. You see the essence of the person, not just their personality or their flaws.
Which is hard sometimes, right?
It can be.
Huh.
But it allows you to connect on a deeper level with more understanding.
More compassion.
Yeah, even for people who challenge you.
It's like seeing the divine in everyone.
And then there's expressing love more freely. Giving your gifts without holding back.
So not overthinking it, just being genuine and open.
Yeah, like living as an expression of love. Let your actions flow from that place.
And that doesn't have to be some grand gesture.
No, it can be small things. A smile, really listening to someone, putting care into your work.
It's the intention behind it.
Exactly. Now, Deida knows this isn't always easy.
Life gets in the way, right?
Distractions, stress, negativity. It's easy to lose sight of that blue truth.
But he says those are the moments that matter most.
There are opportunities to practice, to strengthen your connection to that deeper reality.
Like a muscle you have to keep working out.
And that's where surrender comes in.
We talked about that with the feminine energy, too.
It's the same principle. You can't force enlightenment.
Or force yourself to feel a certain way.
You have to let go of the need to control, trust the process.
Like that surfer analogy you used.
The surfer doesn't create the wave, they learn to ride it.
So it's about aligning yourself with the flow of life.
Trusting the wisdom of the universe.
And when you surrender in that way, what happens?
You open yourself up to all sorts of possibilities. Deeper love, freedom, joy. It's amazing.
This book has been quite a journey.
It is dense, but so rewarding.
Blue Truth really challenges you to think differently.
To live differently.
So as we wrap up, one last question for our listeners. What does embodying the Blue Truth look like in your life?
How would it change your interactions, your work, your relationships?
It's something to really ponder. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Have it sparked something in you?
Keep seeking that Blue Truth.